To open it up a little bit later for you to go over any questions I might have missed. I've read the questions, I've printed some, but I do think that pretty much I'm going to cover, maybe from a different angle, what you want to talk about. And if I haven't done that by the end of the webinar, then obviously I'm going to have a Q&A time, and I invite you to ask some questions. I will make a very, very clear disclaimer. Firstly, I am not a medical doctor. I am a health coach, and my perspective is very much my own perspective and my own opinion. I can promise you that my opinion is based on very broad research. And when I say broad, what I mean is I have not just focused on what I want to find. I have looked from as many different angles and been as open in my research as I can be. I also want to explain that I am not offering any answers, especially. I am offering, if you like, I'm sharing with you why I'm not stressed or worried or panicked, and what I'm doing and why I've reached this conclusion, okay? One of the difficulties may be that some of my perceptions and conclusions are based on the fact that I am in a very different belief structure and paradigm about viruses. And I am going to share that with you today, but I understand that if that is a sticking point, then some of the other stuff I'm going to share is going to be, it doesn't make sense in the current paradigm of the way that everyone is working and seeing things. So that is going to be one of the things I'm going to invite you to go away and research for yourself. Invite you to think very deeply about your own instinct and intuition and higher intellect of what may or may not be possible. And I also want to invite you, and I'll talk a bit later about the fact that everybody is doing their best, even the people hoarding the toilet paper. And I'm going to explain why that is happening and put it into perspective. And also why, the government is responding the way that it is. And, I'm going to share with you my view of the big picture and then some of the detail. And then I'm going to talk about kind of personal care, family, community, social, and obviously extended levels of social interaction, such as the workplace, and really how we can do our best to minimize risk, minimize symptoms, and really take care of ourselves and take care of those around us. And that's what a lot of the questions have been about, okay? If you are concerned and you think I may have missed your question, I didn't print them all out because some came from messengers, some came on the threads, and some came through email. I may have missed your question. Mostly they were things I was going to cover, but if you're concerned, please now in your question box, there is a separate question box. If you'd like to put your questions now, I can have them. And if I do kind of lose my attention, it's usually I've got two monitors here, and it might mean that I am reading the questions or responses. The conversation thread is beside the picture of me, but I do put the chat box, the question box on the side so that I can read it. So at the moment, there's no open questions. I won't be typing a question back. I will be responding by talking. I will open it up at the end for live questions. I think I know how to do that. And I have never tried a discussion in a webinar, but let's see how we go. So if you have a question now or a concern now, please put it in the Q&A box. If you can't see me or hear me at this point, now would be a good time to let me know. I am going to close other programs that may be a bit of a strain. I did do most of them, but I needed a couple. Okay. I did draft some slides, and then I decided that it was getting very easy to get lost in quotes, statistics, details that actually, although I want to put them in perspective, I don't want to get lost in. And it's very important that we can bring perspective, and actually that was a really good email I had from Sally. We can bring perspective without spreading fear. And I may have been guilty of that myself by spreading some of the documents that we've come across. One of the problems, and I'll apologize now, one of the problems with sharing documents is quite often there are very poignant parts of you know, a documentary or a document or a piece of information and research that is relevant and I believe is very helpful, but sometimes the conclusions drawn from it or the other information is not. And there was one very, very good video recently that I watched that was bang on, but some other conclusions around some of that information I didn't agree with. So it is very difficult to sort and sift through this information. And that's one of the things I want to help a little bit with today, to bring some perspective. I am going to mention some of the theories, but you know, and even though I did print out lots and lots of statistics that I can quote to you and charts and information about correlations, I'm very keen, you know, that all of these stuff, I'm very keen not to get caught up in any of those, but to bring them into perspective. Okay, so I'm just going to read the one question that's come in. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to outline some of the main questions that I'm going to address, and this is how I'm going to do it, and I'll take photographs of these and make them available after with this webinar if you would like to see them more closely. Okay, so I've got a button now I can click and say I'm going to answer that live. Okay, just a little background about myself, just to kind of put this in perspective. So I'm a health coach. I am trained in German medicine and meta-medicine, but in the recent last couple of years, I have set up the Conscious Health Institute. We have just had our registration for the registration of Conscious Health Institute as a registered trademark. So it'll have a little R after it now, which I'm very excited about. And the Conscious Health Institute is really my way of bringing together all of the things that I have learned and really working with the people that I think are in alignment with my way of working and my outlook. And I'm very pleased to say that we have already have some qualified coaches. We have 4, possibly 5 qualified coaches. And we're working together on the plans to offer courses as soon as I get this book out. Now I'm going to share with you some of the information that is going to be in the new book, because I think we need this view and this way of understanding things. So I'm going to share some of that with you. But really, my understanding from working with huge, you know, training in worker stress management, for global sports brands, and teaching in places like Indonesia and Thailand. And in 1 2-week stint, I trained over 10,000 workers in stress management, right to the other end of working with my colleague Caroline in Bosnia, in association with the Healing Hands, and we work with people with complex PTSD, and kind of everything in between. So you may know me as EFT, energy therapy. You may know me from meta health, meta medicine. I no longer say that I'm a meta health master trainer or master practitioner, because my work is now all to do with my new theories in Conscious Health Institute, which has emerged as a result of the training that we have had last year with the coaches. So a new understanding, a new way of putting the information together and helping it make sense has emerged from everything that I'm trained in, and obviously my experience as a coach and therapist, and other things, and my own personal experience. So I'm going to share some of that with you today and give you something to work with following this, and tell you a little bit about our tribal dynamic exchange that we're setting up, as well as some other support that we might have to offer you. So I am going to talk about some of the conspiracy theory concepts. I aren't going to say, I'm not going to fix on any one thing. I am going to explore what you can do to deal with how you're feeling, and what you can do to minimize risk to yourself and risk to those that you care about. Okay, that sounds a fair target, or a fair desired outcome. I've had one question. Please do send me more if you have them. But some of the things I want to address, I'm just going to put on a sort of questions here, to give you an idea of what I want to make sure I cover. And if this doesn't cover what you want it to cover, then please do raise the question now. So I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey. Okay, so I'm going to talk about what viruses are, what we're told they are, what we believe they are, and the impact that they have. I'm going to talk about our own healing intelligence, and there's going to be a bit of a what if, okay, because I'm going to invite you to look at historically where we kind of diverged onto a particular pattern, and the pros and cons of that pattern. We will talk about how symptoms arise. We'll talk about what symptoms mean, and we'll talk about what we can do to minimize symptoms and what we can do to come out the other side. We'll talk about are these microbes contagious? Because I know that people are hearing different things. We will also talk about threshold factors and other things that impact our health and what we can do about that. And we'll also talk about the conspiracy to do with 5G, to do with vaccines, and to do with global corporations such as the one that Bill Gates owns. I mean, I've got everything printed out. I'm not going to get into the detail of that, but I'll put it in perspective. Okay, we're going to talk about, we'll talk about, you would call it really genetic engineering, and also depopulation. Okay, all of these have come up as fears, and obviously by all means share with the group. Actually, there's a whole long load of stuff. I've had a lot about okay, no, they're all about sound. Okay, so how is that? You can either give me a wave or just say that's good. Is there anything apart from then moving into what you can do? We will really take this into focusing what matters, what I think matters. Okay, but I didn't make the slides for the simple reason that I found I was starting to get into comparing statistics and trying to show you the kind of statistical side of things, and actually that is not what I wanted this to be about. Okay, no more questions, no more comments. Okay, so if you are familiar with German new medicine and meta-medicine, you may have heard people say viruses don't exist. That's rubbish. They don't exist. And that Dr. Harmer said viruses don't exist. And that's not accurate. It's incompletely explained. And I want to explain to you how our immune system and what immunity actually means and what it is first. Okay? And this is really what everything else, in my understanding, is built on. So you may want to sit back and just let it wash over you. You may want to make notes. I'm not going to go into the complexities of it, but I am going to go into the general concept, and then we'll see later why it matters so much in the way that we deal with this. Because all of the solutions that you're being offered that you feel are not working, it feels like that for a reason. It feels like that because actually they're solutions to something that's not going on the way we're told it's going on, and therefore we still feel helpless. And it's important that we understand why we feel that helplessness and that fear, and that we can own our own health and own the way that we process how we feel about things. Okay, so I'm going to come back to this. This has got a little pencil sketch on that you might not be able to see. Okay, so I was going to sort of do this, you know, you are here. And I've got a lovely little card that comes out of a box of those, is it Buja vegan chocolates? And it just says, how did today come about? And I have that on my mirror in the bathroom. And I just think it's a beautiful question, because it could be the bigger question, or it could just be, you know, if I'm feeling a particular way, how did that happen? How has this consolidated into this moment? Because at the end of the day, there's only this moment, and everything that's been happening, I now do have to deal with how I feel about that and what's going on, and make some choices. We can't reverse that, and I won't go off into time and how time works and feels and things today, but there's a whole lot of research on that too. I've got some books here to wave at you a bit later. Some things to do with like when time breaks down and how the heart works, books about mitochondria and all that kind of stuff. But I can promise, all I can say is I promise that everything that I'm going to share with you is based on not just, oh, I learned that from that model. I've gone out in every direction, even unrelated to the point, and everything's come back and fit back together. Okay, so if we're here, the main thing that I want to really talk about is, Victor, this pen doesn't work very well, is viruses. But I also want to talk about the idea of a deadly virus coming to get us. I also want to talk about 5G. I also want to talk about one that may be modified, and then to do with that is vaccines And then to do with that really is proteins, because there's a possibility that there's a big confusion here. So the first thing I'm going to do is differentiate. We get very, very confused when we use the same word to mean something else. So when somebody says, I've caught a cold, we have started to make the collapse that, and it means to one person, well, what it means is I've got some symptoms and I've caught a cold off somebody, therefore I've caught a bug or a virus, and that I caught it. Okay, I caught a cold, and it means a number of different things. It means I have some symptoms. It means I may have been in contact with somebody else, therefore my belief might be that I have caught this. Okay, but I think it's really, it's getting really vital that we differentiate what specific things mean when people say them, because otherwise we perpetuate the confusion and the fear. So I am developing, as much as possible, much more clean language and clean ways of talking about things. And I need to tell you that now, because I'm going to use that language as we talk, and I'm differentiating very, very particularly between what I am going to call natural viruses and the difference between a virus and a symptom, okay? Because cold blurs the whole thing, or the flu blurs the whole thing, okay? Flu, influenza is the description, the umbrella, the syndrome description for a collection of symptoms related to a particular type of what we call an infection. And I want to differentiate infection also, okay? With me so far? So the language is really important when you talk to yourself, when you talk to others, because it communicates a very particular state of helplessness or state of lack of impact or lack of part of something. If we kind of collapse it all into the same thing, we're not speaking cleanly to each other, and therefore the risk of, or the potential for confusion is huge unless we clarify what actually we're talking about. So we will talk about symptoms, which is not the same as actual microbes, which is not the same as what we're told certain viruses and things are, and I'm going to try to break that down. Is that okay so far? And you know, please stop me if you feel I'm going too fast, or you feel I'm kind of I've taken a step that you're not sure how I got there, because I will break it down. Okay, so please do give me feedback, because I can't, it's not like a meeting. I can see you there. I can't see you. I can see the names, but I can't see you. So I'm going to do a little history lesson first, okay? Viruses. What is a virus? We've got a really, really cool little picture at the moment of this thing with these little kind of trumpets on. And this wonderful thing that if you research, there was an article the other day that talked about which university got together with another research panel and designed the graphics of what they think the virus looks like. That's really interesting, because it's not a picture of a real virus, okay? First off, it's a computer generated picture of what people in the know, scientists, think the virus looks like, okay? And I want you to bear that in mind. And it is very nicely designed, and it's really cool. But now we have an entity, now we have a thing to be afraid of, okay? I have a book here. It's back when Pasteur discovered penicillin, okay? In fact, I'll do it on another page for now. So what is a virus? Well, Pasteur had and Béchamp were two scientists, two contemporary scientists. I wrote down back in the, is it the 18th century, 17th century, 18th century? Can't remember. You can look it up. And at the same time as Pasteur developed germ theory, at the same time we had Béchamp, his contemporary. Pasteur's theory, as he examined the blood, was that germs got into our system. We were attacked by germs, and therefore we had an immune defense system. And that immune defense system killed the infectious and killed the attack bacteria. Okay, and at the same time, Béchamp's work, he was saying, well, that doesn't seem to be doing that. It's certainly something going on. There's certainly activity in the blood, and the blood is, you know, there are certainly, so if you've ever watched white blood cells and phagocytes, they kind of come along and they go, ooh, and they digest and they eat all kinds of things, all kinds of components in the blood to process them and detox them. So we've got a kind of red blood cells that take the oxygen around the body, and then we've got all these other components, and in particular we have ones that we've identified as immune, you know, fighting on our behalf, immune cells, the white blood cells. Now, Béchamp said, I think he called it the milieu. Something is triggering something, but actually what's happening in the blood is in and of itself, the bacteria and the viruses are being made in the blood. They're doing something, but it's all kind of happening as part of a system. They're not coming from somewhere else. We're making them, we're doing that, and there's a sort of process going on. And the thing is, Béchamp was not a very good promoter of himself, and Pasteur was. And also, Pasteur created the problem, and therefore there was a solution, right? So if there is germs, then we can kill them, and we can. So he noticed that the penicillin affected them, which it does. So we're going to look at that too. So we're going to look at vaccines and what actually happens. Now, on his deathbed, Pasteur retracted, and he actually said Béchamp was right. Okay, but all of our fundamental medical practice and medicine is based on germ theory and based on the attacking germ. Therefore, our immune system is really a defense system. Okay, and this defense system helps us against these attacking germs. Okay, and that is fungus, bacteria, and viruses. Okay, and viruses being the newer. Okay, and even though in the end he agreed with Béchamp, and there is vast amounts of evidence that show Béchamp to be correct, and vast amounts of evidence to show that although we do see that we can have an impact on germs, there is still no real evidence that it is something from outside attacking. Okay, so we'll come on to this in a bit. Is that okay so far? It also corresponds with the whole Newton, and it was actually Descartes that said that the body is a machine, and treatment of symptoms is therefore treating the, I just had a message through, someone's had to go, that's okay. Treating symptoms is really what we do. So allopathic medicine recognizes the symptoms of something as a result of something breaking down, going wrong, attacking itself, all of this kind of autoimmune disease and that, and it seeks to alleviate its symptoms. There is nothing wrong with that, and you'll see why in a while why it's very important that that is something that we can do. However, as the symptoms are a result of something else, and therefore allopathic medicine only masks the symptoms, what we do is we potentially create other problems. Okay, so knowing that we treat people as machines, not as a whole person, and this person called Dr. Thomas Cowan, who has written 3 amazing books, he basically points out that therefore when we prescribe, or when they prescribe allopathic medicine, they're really treating the body like it's a dead person, because they're not treating holistically like a whole person. They're simply treating it as a machine, and as such like a mechanical and non-living thing. So bear that in mind. Okay, right, now with that knowledge, Dr. Harmer and German medicine really began to find in his evidence and his work that not only was Béchamp correct, and that it was a particular built-in part of the way we worked, but also there was much more of a correlation in terms of our evolution and the evolution of all bacterias, and therefore naturally occurring bacterias and germs are very symbiotic. We work in a very, very organized, very specific, very intelligent way. This is not going to be a crash course in German medicine, but I am going to outline just so that you know. And obviously this forms part of the diagnostic or probably not allowed to say diagnostic, but the assessment tool, an analysis tool that we use when we are helping somebody understand why they have their symptoms. But quite simply, we have at the brainstem level, earlier reptile brain, the earliest microbes were the fungus and fungi, and then through evolution we became more complex. So you get into the newer brain, and there are very, very early here macrobacteria. Okay, but then we have the evolution of bacteria, and as they became more complex, we then go into the evolution of viruses. Okay, and actually there is a crossover here and a crossover here, as we evolved, so did the complexity, and newer microbes evolved. And we work very, very intelligently and symbiotically with those. And tissues that are related to these or kind of controlled or receive information from certain parts of our brain, actually those tissues only work with certain parts of this tissue. For example, if someone has a skin issue, but we don't know which layer it is. If it's a fungus, we automatically know it is in the dermis. If it is a bacteria or a virus, we know it is in the epidermis, because we know that the dermis is a tissue related and controlled and receiving information from the early brain, but the ectodermal tissue, the outer tissue, which is a newer complex development, works specifically with newer bacteria and our viruses. Okay, so just as an example, that's a very complex area to go into, because it really is part of the foundation of German medicine and how we can do that analysis. Okay, so it's important because we're beginning to put this into context. So what happens to us is we have a natural immune system. And that immune system is not about protection, it's about regulation. Okay, so we regulate. Our system is basically, if you want to take the kind of mechanical approach for a moment, it's input, process, output. Stuff comes in, stuff happens in me, and then some stuff has to go out, and I have to constantly regulate that, whether it's new cells and old cells, whether it's food, whether it's people, whether it's feelings. We need that flow. Okay, and most diseases are either too much coming in, or something that is causing dissonance coming in, or not enough coming in, something not working in the middle and processing properly, and usually because we haven't got something that we needed to come in, okay, or something not going out, either too much going out, like bleeding, or severe diarrhea, or things not going out, which we need to go out, so then we get a toxic buildup. So I want you just to consider that everything, all of our senses is incoming. All of electromagnetic smog is incoming. And I'm going to try to explain to you why, in a way, it matters, but it doesn't matter, because it's what you do that has the biggest impact, okay? But I'll put that in perspective. So the point really is at this stage that we have a regulatory system, and that regulatory system really is the blood itself. It is the immune system, so all of our T cells, and one thing you can do is tap your chest to help with the with generating T cells, because after a certain age we kind of don't do certain things that we did up to puberty. We'll talk about these in solutions later. And in that immune system, we have the white blood cells, and we have a microbiome, our own biological. We are as Bruce Lipton says, a petri dish, if you're American, petri dish of microbes. Okay, so that's something to do with the organization of it. And the point is, your body knows exactly what to do. You don't have to tell it how to heal. You don't have to make it heal. You have to figure out really what is getting in the way of it doing its thing, because it knows what to do. Okay? There's no questions so far. Is that okay? So here's little me or you. This is not necessarily a skirt. It's just a body. And we have our own, so I am now differentiating naturally generated microbes as my own auto-biome. Okay, I had a bit of a glitch then, so hopefully you can still see me. I don't know why my video went off then. Okay, is that okay? Am I still there? Have you still got me? Who knows, energetically could be good. Okay. Okay, good. I did go, but I'm back. Yes, I'm back. Oh, hang on. It's there you go. So we have an auto-biome. We have our own, and we have, there's this description at the moment of good bacteria and bad bacteria, and good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. Okay, it's not that. Okay, what that actually translates as is bacteria, we figured out what it does, and bacteria, we don't know what it does, but we know that we don't feel very nice when it's doing what it does. Okay? That's what that means. It's not bad. It's still doing something important, but it's true. We don't like how we feel when it's doing it. Is that fair? Is it fair? I'm not going to deny that we don't have symptoms, because the first thing when you say to somebody, viruses don't exist, it's not the way it is at all. That is easily confused as denying people's discomfort, denying that symptoms happen, and denying that there is some sort of microbial activity. So it's not helpful to say there aren't viruses. It's not accurate. What we have is an auto-biome. We have an immune system, and we make the right type of microbe to do the right kind of job. we naturally make it. We may need to build our ability to do that. And really, we know when we need a fungus or a bacteria or something. Yeah, okay, I might get this horrible pustule. I might get a spot, okay? And there is bacteria in that process. But that process is because I felt I needed to be thicker skinned. I made extra tissue. I don't need it now. Something's got to happen with that tissue. It has to be got rid of. So my wonderful, beautiful bacteria, in part, maybe I made it, but in part, maybe it was just the stuff that was on my skin already, or, and we'll talk about catching in a minute. Maybe it was a herd one that I needed to get off someone else, but I have got the capacity to get that eaten and get that taken away. The problem is that if I then feel bad about that spot and feel I need to be thicker skinned again, I can trigger myself into making it again, and then I'll get another spot. But that's what the hanging healing, or that's what chronic disease is, a repatterning of the process. But we don't have time to talk about that in detail today. Okay, so, oh, I'm looking at myself. That's because I'm looking to make sure you can see that. Is that okay? That's the camera, right? So our auto-biome knows how to make, and I'm going to call them autoviruses, or an auto in this sense, auto means self, okay? In case you didn't know the origin of the word, it means self. So we make self-viruses, and self-viruses help with a particular tissue and a particular threat to survival, very particular type of survival. And when we've triggered certain tissues, because of that, it then helps us with those tissues. Very specific, and that's going to be relevant in a moment, okay? Okay, Lisa, yeah, and I'm also going to talk about how we manage it too, because managing it's okay, okay? So one of the issues that Dr. Harmer from German New Medicine had was pushing people and rushing people through symptoms because they didn't like them, because they didn't understand what was going on. And I agree with that. It can be an issue because certain things happen in a certain way, and being aware of that makes a big difference. And it makes a big difference. So when I get a cold, or when I get the flu, I recognize, you know, I'm connected to what happened or what I thought was happening even prior to that, and then I go and make sure I help my body become that incubator. The virus doesn't, or the bacteria doesn't make you get a temperature. Your body increases and becomes an incubator to support that microbial detox, that bacteria or that virus or the fungus. So night sweats is often a fungal working through the night with things like the liver. It works through the night, so you might get night sweats, and I support that. You wrap up and you really let it get on with it. Okay, you want it to get on with it. Support it. If those levels are going to get slightly dangerous, and we'll talk about that in a little while, then actually we need to be careful to minimize that, maybe with certain things and you know, allopathic medicine, or take certain measures to look after ourselves and not go too much into that, but really that's what we're doing. Okay, so I'm sorry if I do keep looking down here, because I'm constantly looking to see if anyone's going to say something because my list is there, but I know you're there. Okay, so my auto-biome works for me. It makes self-viruses, self-bacteria, and it makes fungi. If you've got a candida infection, you didn't catch it, and I think that's one probably most likely people will have recognized that they are overgrowing. Well, they are overgrown by themselves, but they're trying to do something, and the question is, what are you triggering them to do? Okay, what anger can't you digest that then you can a bit, and then they go, whee, let's eat that extra tissue now, and then you get triggered again. That's what that is. Okay, so we're just going to stay with that viruses because it's very, very relevant to understand the two processes or the two parts of a process in the way that this virus works. And then we'll come back to all of the other conspiracy theories and the peaks. And thanks to Gary, I printed off your picture of the two different peaks, and I can't find it now. Never mind. And we'll explain what's potentially going on. Okay. So our autoimmune, we can naturally make stuff, but we also are herd animals. Okay. So we also have a herd biome, and it really means that if I've not had the capacity to make that, if I, let's say my diet or something is not very good, that my immune system is not very good, I'm maybe not able to make some of these. Okay, it's like the opposite to what we're told. If my immune system is low, it actually means it's harder for me to regulate making them and then not making them, and then I might get a really big issue that I can't handle, but I go into healing and then I kind of can't regulate myself. So I also have a herd biome, but the point of that is that I'm constantly with the herd, and the herd doesn't just kind of deal with the kind of, and we'll stay with viruses now, the viral load. It helps you process the issue as well, process the safety, the fear, process the threat to survival that is associated in particular with the need to make these. Okay, so is it all to do with susceptibility? Some people are more susceptible. Rochelle, can you just explain what you mean by susceptible? And I'll make sure I cover that. Okay, so in an ideal world, we would all have everything that we need: shelter, survival, safety, a good diet. I want to differentiate between a parasite. A parasite is not a virus, and a virus is not a parasite. We call viruses parasites because they do something to us and we don't like it. Okay, a virus is not the symptom. The symptom is very, very specific, and everyone's getting different symptoms. So there's a different thing going on for different people. There are common symptoms, which we'll talk about. Okay, but actually the virus is not the symptom. The symptom is the symptom. Okay, and that is a very important thing to differentiate. So saying I have a sore throat and I have some symptoms of a sore throat is different to saying I have a virus or I have a, because actually something different's going on to what currently we believe and therefore describe. Okay, so a question from Rochelle: is it to do with susceptibility, more likely to catch a disease? Okay, I'm going to cover catching a disease in a moment. Okay, so a parasite's a parasite. A parasite probably shouldn't be in our body, so we would probably get if we get a parasite, we would make a virus to get rid of it. Or if a microbe that was a foreign body we came into contact with and got into a system, we would make the appropriate microbe to deal with it. And in my herd, we would do that as a herd thing, but of course we would be protecting each other in all the other levels that we need as well, in terms of contact, closeness, support, love, shared food, shared, everything else that makes us able to get better. We'll talk about vaccines in a little while. So, but then also we have a geobiome, which is the readily available bacterias, and there are more bacteria and funguses that are available in the earth, and we interact with those. They're not bad, we interact with them. If you cut yourself and you get dirt in it and then you get pus, That is your body going, that shouldn't be there. Oh, well, I think we just have to get rid of that. We eat it and get rid of it. It isn't the virus trying to attack you and your body going mental. It is the regulation of something not being where it shouldn't be, or being where it shouldn't be, and then being processed out. Another question. Good point. Reviruses are not the symptom. I am homeopath. Okay, so I'm going to mention about homeopathy, because homeopathy helps us through, not does what allopathic medicine does. So I'll cover that as well. If I forget, remind me, Rochelle. Okay, so far we have an auto-biome. We should love our viruses, love our bacteria, because there is only us and our microbes. We are our microbes. And we have this amazing ability to make whatever we need to do specific jobs. Very, very organized. The herd, in the same way, is a way. So think of chicken pox, okay? Kids who get chicken pox. So what we see is my kid doesn't have symptoms, goes to school, comes back, someone else had chicken pox, now my kid's got it, okay? So our assumption based on the Pasteur model is that my kid was fine. You gave, your kid gave my kid this disease, and now my kid's ill, okay? That's the standard model. The thing that's wrong with that model is not only is it completely inaccurate and not true, it doesn't recognize the need for it. The way it used to be was better. So when kids had measles or whatever, you'd send your kids around, or when kids had chickenpox, you send your kids around to catch it. They'd go through it. So the idea of herd immunity is one of herd stability and what you could call viral load stability, okay? Because if the herd all share the microbes, then there is no major peak. This is not what's happening at the moment, by the way. The thing about herd immunity at the moment is not the same as this, because this is based on the fact that we all know what's going on and we know what the issues are. And the difference is in herd immunity here, in this model, we all understand each other, what our fears are, what the issues are, and we are in close contact, we're supporting each other. So it never gets to a high peak of risk or danger because it stays low level impact, okay? Can you see the difference? This herd immunity model, this is how we would naturally work. This is how animals, group animals naturally work. But it only works because they stay connected and in community as a herd. They support each other. There is not isolation. There is not separation. There is not fear of attack, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. Bearing on what you've just said, how come my 8-year-old hasn't had any childhood illness, or just because he's got immunity? Okay, good question. Thank you, Lizzie. So Lizzie's asked, how come my kid hasn't got that? We're going to go on to that. So what I haven't got onto, which is the next bit, is why are some people affected? Why are some people not? Why do some people get very serious responses and some people don't? What makes you in the herd susceptible to symptoms? If this virus is available to everybody in a healthy herd, how come some people have worse symptoms than others? Who is at more risk? What makes the risk? Okay, in this, I'll explain it in this, but then I'm going to talk about what's happening now because it's a bit different. Because we're not in this healthy model of knowing I have an auto-biome and a herd biome and a geobiome where I, can self-regulate with all of the germs and things around me, okay? So if I get a symptom, or if someone gets a symptom, what makes one person worse than the other? Is that okay so far? So in the model I'm offering you, based on equal amounts of research, and people who believe the Béchamp as opposed to the Pasteur are called germ deniers. So I'm really keen to explain the difference. Okay, I'm not denying there's no germs. I'm going to next now explain why the germs or the viruses are not the cause of the symptoms and what they might be doing. So yeah, and I mean, this makes vaccinations really interesting because well, my whole argument about vaccines really is that if you want to have a vaccine, have a vaccine. If you're scared, I'm not. I'm either am or aren't going to get a particular symptom. But if I get it and you've had a vaccine, what are you worried about anyway? You're not going to get what I got then. So why do I need to have it? Doesn't make any sense, right? Anyway, that's a whole bit in a moment. So we have a natural biome. We've been told that autoimmune disease attack ourselves. No, we don't. No, the body doesn't do that. The body has never done that. Just because we see a certain activity and we don't understand it means that we have labeled it as a broken machine and autoimmune disease. And it's true, people with immune issues are going to be more susceptible, but I will explain why. Having skin issues, psoriasis, rosacea, and other autoimmune issues, thyroid and psoriasis. I have a lot of questions dragging the direction away from corona. I'll bring them back together, Ivana. Hopefully they will autoimmune disease affect anything related to coronavirus? Possibly, but I'll explain. Okay, so I'm going there as well, so don't worry. Okay, I will cover that. Okay, so let's look how it works. We have a natural sympathetic parasympathetic rhythm. We have a daily, generally more active sympathetic. In German medicine, it's called sympathicatonia, and then vagatonia. Vagatonia because of vagal regulation, as in the vagal break and going into rest. Okay, it's not good to really be here all the time either. The aim, by the way, of coherence is not to be in a constant state of rest. Coherence is the regulation of your cycles, of all of your frequency cycles, but all of your sympathetic, parasympathetic. So below the line we have here parasympathetic, above it sympathetic. I'll just put parasympathetic. Okay, I hope you can read it. So on a day-to-day basis, we kill off ourselves billions of cells and we make billions of cells. We're in a constant turnover of billions of every single organ, every single tissue, in a constant state of turnover. We need a constant to every single cell in your body. We need a constant supply of oxygen for respiration, which is the release of the energy for all of those functions to happen. And your thyroid and your liver and your pancreas and your lungs are all part of that system, and they all serve one purpose, which is to get energy, oxygen to every cell. Okay, even the eating and the going to the toilet, the whole process is about supplying energy to your cells and the mitochondria. Okay, and we have to take away cells, and if something comes in that's not meant to be in one place, or we've had to increase some cells somewhere and now we don't need them anymore, they have to be eaten and taken away. Or if we dilated something because we need more blood, like we dilate an artery or a vein because we needed more blood to get through quickly, but now we don't need to do that now, then we need to build that back up. So we're constantly building up. They're like the doozers on Fraggle Rock, right? So these kind of doozer viruses help you build up tissue. But of course, if you were to invite a workman in to build you a stud wall in your house and go, I just want a nice little stud wall there. Okay, when he makes that stud wall, he has all the materials and he makes a mess and he has leftover stuff and all of that stuff, then he takes, hopefully, if he's a good builder, he'll take that away. And the same thing occurs in our body. So things like sputum and phlegm and pus, and certainly when we go to the toilet, we are in a constant state of regulation and detox. So we have immunity, regulation, and detox. And our system engages in that fungus, bacteria, and viruses. Okay. Now I'm going to come on to the coronavirus and why this was all relevant, but now we're going to get a bit more specific. I'm going to just talk now about particularly tissues that engage and the organization of viruses, the triggers that we may personally experience that make us susceptible to working with viruses, and how we might engage with those viruses, and how we can have an impact on that to create more balance and more safety. Okay. And then we'll look at the other conspiracy stuff, and we'll see how that fits, and we'll see what you can still do, how you can maintain that position so that you are doing all that you can do. Is that okay? And again, please do ask questions. So why does one person, as someone asked, as Lizzie asked, I think it was, not get a vaccine and someone get one? Why does someone get different symptoms slightly to others, or somebody get a worse worse symptom? And why are somebody dangerously susceptible to certain responses? Okay. The body is so intelligent that when it has to adapt to something, it knows it's going to have to clear it up after. So it'll adapt the tissue that's relevant to the situation, but it'll also know that at some point, when that ends, it's got to do something about that adaptation, because it's not a long term. All of our responses to a threat, to survival, are short term. They should be short term. There is nothing wrong with the flight, fight, or freeze mechanism. It is a momentary help with a load, with an increased need for capacity in a very particular thing, depending on what the threat is. Okay, I need more oxygen. Then there is a particular change either in the alveoli, if it's literally I think I'm going to die, or if I'm going to have a fight, then it might be my bronchi, and the bronchi dilate very quickly to get more oxygen in, and then eventually we end up with a cough. Okay, some of these examples are obviously going to be relevant now to the coronavirus. So when we experience this threat, or we've had a trauma and we have an ongoing fear about it happening again, or a trigger. So although this was initially possibly a trauma, it could just be a state that's been created, which is where we're at now. Okay, that's what's going on at the moment. A state that's been created and a kind of been cultured, been made. Cultured is a good word because it's culture viruses, right? When we experience a threat, we adapt. After we've adapted and the threat has gone, the body knows that it has to do something with that tissue, and it knows what to do. So viruses associate with what we call ectodermal tissue, and they're all to do with the more advanced part of our development, the advanced part of our brain, and an advanced social connection, but for a very specific reason. And this is not German medicine or meta-medicine. This is now part of my own model that I'm going to share with you. Okay. Every single natural viral infection, I'll use infection, but it's actually viral symptom, is a healing symptom. Because I had a threat, I adapted to the threat. Now the threat has passed, I engage my viruses to eat. Well, actually, they're building up that tissue and basically getting rid of the toxins, and they will help to repair, and they will help to detox and get rid of it. Okay. Problem is that we have got stuck in. That's what we notice. That's become a daily thing for us. Well, my neighbor is going to you know, I'm going to have a fight with my neighbor, or you know, there's some kind of thing going on here, and I'm going to list them in a minute. When the danger passes, I then don't need that adaptation anymore. I need to re-regulate, go back into homeostasis. And there is a proper word for this, and you heard it here, folks. It is called allostasis. It's not the two phases of disease, which is what it's called in metamedicine, because it's not a disease process. This is a normal process. This, if you imagine on a seesaw, if you're in balance and standing here, you are more in homeostasis. There's not much wiggle. But if you have a big load here, something has to happen to bring you back, and this deregulation takes you in a bigger swing. And if you get stress build up, it's called an allostatic load, which is what makes people more susceptible. So I will cover that. This is called allostasis. So you kind of got a homeostasis in the middle, but then the more out of sync you get, and there is an argument in the specialists that although somebody defines allostasis as a different thing to homeostasis, someone else says, well, it's still homeostasis, but working in more extreme, and both are correct. It is just what your system does. So the more you kick it out, or the weaker your threshold, the less, you know, the weaker your diet, the more in fear you are, the poorer your quality, and you know, and the poverty and everything else that contributes to you being healthy in body and mind, the more susceptible you will be to, if something gets resolved, whether you have the capacity to do that or not. Okay, so now let's move on. A normal virus happens here. So a threat to survival, the bronchi, if it's a fight, or someone's going to leave, okay, so somebody coming into your space or leaving your space, invading your space, or loss of someone from your space. That's not separation or abandonment, they're different. Just a loss of somebody, a sense of losing somebody beyond. This is not being able to control your boundaries, your own sense of boundaries. So somebody who leaves, and the problem is I'm not whole without that person. We're going to talk about identity. Okay. When that threat is there, once it's resolved, it could be that they came back, or it could be that the person that was coming in backed off. I'm all right now. When the issue is resolved, the viruses help me repair the bronchi. I get a tight build up and a chest infection here. I get the cough here, and then in fact, this is not correct either, because what it actually really looks like, and I'm not going to go off on fractals at the moment, but everything works fractally. Okay, so actually what it does is it does that. Okay, so we have the peak, and then we actually have another little peak and another little peak. So what we have is the stress load. You see that? Let's get my pen. We have the stress load. So we have here. Hang on, another pen. Okay, and then we have this slow, but the point is we don't notice it here once it starts to go. Okay, and Miri's quite right. You'll notice that sometimes you're just too busy to be ill. You know, teachers are ill in the holiday. When you're stressed, you're not ill. So people who get aches and pains, arthritis, well, you get up and move around. What you're doing is putting a bit of stress on the joints. As soon as you sit down, everything goes, oh, quick, we're healing. Quick, get a bit of water, because we need that, the water and edema to protect the healing and to bring the nutrients and to actually help the tissues to repair. So suddenly I'm getting the swelling, and I'm getting the healing on here, but now I'm all stiff and uncomfortable and I feel horrible. Okay, So, but it's the healing of something going on in here. Had you gone to the gym and you'd have worked out at the gym and come home and then like been, oh, I can't use my arms, I had such a good session at the gym, you directly connect the stress you put on yourself and on your muscles and bones and ligaments with the swelling and the DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. You'd have a direct, because you did it. But the same program happens when you think, oh, I'm not good enough to do this, I'm not good enough to hold my head up, I'm not good enough to stand up tall, I'm not good enough to stand my ground, I'm not good enough to change direction. The bit of your musculoskeletal system that does that is doing that program. Okay, that's decided, because that's not viruses, that's bacteria. If at all any bacteria was involved in that, but usually it's just swelling and recovery. Okay, back to viruses. What's the problem then? What is going on now? Let's come back now to what is going on now. If viruses are naturally occurring, if we have the capacity to have viruses and they help us get better, first of all, we're differentiating between symptom cause, okay? With the symptom happens here, but that's not the cause. It's whatever happened here is the cause. And so coming back to children at school who share chickenpox, there's a number of reasons why one child might get it and another might not. Chickenpox is to do with separation, okay? And the different symptoms that the child gets are related to how they have had a shock of separation and had to process it. So the process of dealing with the shock event that may be here is slightly different for everybody, but obviously there is a common pattern, and really that's what Dr. Harmer was able to do and verify this, okay? So not all, but many or most children will have to go through their first separation, really big separation from their parents when they go to school. Which, so let's say it's that. It might not be that particular one. They may have had other separations, but let's just say a percentage of children, for the sake of the demonstration, go through the separation from their parents for the first time and go to school. They cannot process that separation. Then they are learning this primary individuation to be themselves, okay? And they go into stress about it because they don't have, all it takes for a threat to survival is powerlessness. Well, they can't say no, you're making them go, and a threat, and basically you don't have a strategy for the resources, okay? You are helpless, hopeless, okay? Some kids will get used to it quicker. So, and some kids may get coughs and colds or whatever, okay? Some kids have a healthier biome, and some kids may make the viruses that help them repair those tissues before other kids. In which case, as soon as other kids begin to resolve the issue, then they will become what you might call susceptible, ready to engage the virus. Either they can begin making it for themselves, but often the way this works at this level is they would be sharing it with each other. What I've noticed is quite often there's usually a particular event that helps kids bond and suddenly feel like they belong. It's usually a really good teacher. It's usually a particular activity or something. But over a period, usually quite a short period, kids tend to be able to find their place and be okay with being separate, okay? Or separated from their parents. And that is when they will get the symptoms. If a kid doesn't get the symptoms, it means a number of things. It could either mean they didn't have the stress in the first place. They were, okay, see mum, ta-da. Or they maybe felt it a bit, but you know, they got over it a bit. But it was very, they kind of went, yeah, not that fussed about it. You know, it's okay. In which case they just went, a bit of a snot, bit of a sore skin, and then they're okay. Okay, so the less this impact, the less this impact. Okay, but in general, let's say that's the standard model for kids chickenpox. So it could mean they weren't stressed, so they didn't need to get chickenpox. The other reason could be that they did get stressed, but they're still stressed, because you won't get an infection if you're still stressed about the issue. So it could mean that they are still have an ongoing issue about that separation, in which case they won't get this, or they may dip a bit, but basically they're not coming out of this, and therefore they don't have time. And if they're given medicines and vaccines, what that does is it suppresses these symptoms. Doesn't deal with the issue. It suppresses the symptoms, in which case you can really lower that, which can be very important, because if that was acute and that's acute, it can get dangerous. So minimizing this is a good idea in some cases. And the more vulnerable someone is, of course, the more you would want to look after that through the healing. But homeopathy brings you through it. If you suppress the symptoms to the point where you actually put somebody into sympathetic again, you actually just make it worse. So psoriasis is a really good example, because the more you put corticosteroids and steroid creams on a eczema or psoriasis, you do suppress the symptoms. But what you've done, if you're not careful, is you put them back into stress, and you're thinning the skin, which is what the purpose of that was, by the way. It was to cut to the skin thins in order to be able to not, and in doing that, then it's not as sensitive, and it means I can cope with not having the touch of somebody I want. So you suppress the symptoms, but as soon as you start taking the creams, what happens? Well, now you just got to go back into the healing again. So you still got to go through the healing again anyway. The best way to do it with medications is to minimize, but not push back, and support through with some, we have a sort of a threshold that I'm going to talk about in a minute, that is a safe threshold to keep somebody within. Ideally, you keep within it by suppressing the stress, but if you couldn't do that in time, and now you're here, which is where we are now, what can we do here to manage? So I'm going to talk about preventing becoming vulnerable, and I'm going to talk about things that we can do to suppress or to support coming through here. Does that make sense so far? I am aware there's half an hour left, and I was going to do the last half an hour for questions, but we did start a bit late. So if we go only quarter of an hour, I'll add over, because we started quarter of an hour late. Okay, can I get some feedback on as to that making sense so far? Okay. And I do want to tell you about what we've got to offer you. And obviously this is going to be recorded. So what's happening? So viruses. Dr. Harmer's work has shown us that viruses respond to tissues associated or get their information from the cortex. It's the more developed part of us. And if you have a CT scan, you can see in the CT scan specifically marks in the CT scan, energetic, like because it's a slice, it's a ring, but it's actually a kind of a ball of energy, or a ball of information that is then organized by your brain and your tissue and your psyche, all as one complete living system, and actually as a herd, as a complete herd too. Okay, this is a fractal response actually, because it happens on a cellular level in your body, in the herd, and basically that we're meant to regulate it all together, and that's not what's happening now, which is going to be one of the things I'm going to suggest that we work on in a moment. So if you've had any of these, we've all had them one way or another, maybe at some point, but these are the ones that generally may make you a little bit more susceptible, and therefore to allow yourself to regulate yourself when these triggers come up. So boundary violations, and so you might have had like cystitis or urinary tract infections, piles or stomach ulcers because it's territory, anger issues, boundary issues with about your stuff, people taking your stuff, people. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Piles cannot make your position clear. People, this is mine. Do not fucking listen to me. You're not validating what I'm saying. I don't care if you disagree, but you're not validating me. Not being able to find the right sexual partner or mate, or doubting that you're even good enough to do that. Actually, I found that's another trigger. Loss of money. Yeah, that's right, Lizzie. I'm going to cover this. Things, people, okay, even divorce, houses, or loss of access to children, or loss of something. And then we've got a fear of speaking out, fear of talking out, a fear of confrontation, a fear of so the kind of fear of being able to speak, or you couldn't cry or scream out. Okay, they're specific, but they're all the responses to a certain type of threat. So let's now have a look at what's going on. The way that particular theme works is, this is from the new model now. We all need, another way of putting it is, there's 3 ways to die. Okay, there are 3 ways to die. And this is a good way of looking at it because it takes us away from the big T trauma and the small t trauma. This is really what my book is about, but you're kind of getting a glimpse of a simple part of it that would help you make sense of this. This fits with the evolution of the brain and Dr. Harmer's work, and our evolution and our evolution of our needs. It also connects together Maslow's hierarchy and Viktor Frankl's search for meaning, because they have 2 very opposite views, and yet we seem to find that they're both right. So how is that? So Viktor Frankl said man's search for meaning, as long as you have meaning, you can kind of put up with anything. And Maslow said, well, no, you have to have the basics first. So I'm going to explain. We have a physical body, we have emotions in the limbic system, and we also have thought. I'm just going to put it as thought for now, okay? We have in terms of evolution, the reptilian, the mammal, and the human triune brain, okay? We need to have enough. I'm going to get another pen now. And when we're doing work in the workplace, this is the structure that helps things make sense, or helps us to look at how do we make this work in a big group. Okay, and our tribal dynamic exchange that Lucy will be coordinating, which I'll talk about at the end, is based on understanding this, how a group can come together and immediately create safety. So we need to have enough, we need to do enough, and we need to be enough. If I don't have enough, I could die. If I, in the tribal, I need to do enough because it's connected to getting enough, right? So if I don't do enough, then I might not have enough and I'll die. If I am not enough in myself, and this is my identity, then I can't do enough because you won't value me in the tribe. Okay, this is our values. And if I can't do enough, then I won't have enough to survive, okay? And fundamentally, we can have a death at each level. So somebody who has been made redundant, for example, loses their identity and sense of self, but also their role. And this is really about relevance. Because if I'm not relevant in the tribe, I'll then be abandoned and I don't count, so you'll leave me behind. So each one of these is existential. It is a real threat. We tend to call the visceral, physical ones the big T traumas and these others small t, but they're not. They are all linked. And our new model helps you very quickly talk. And in a couple of, like 10 minutes chat, you can find out where someone's biggest traumas are, where their biggest needs are, where their best strategies are, and therefore start building on their strategies and start downgrading the stressors and increasing the resources. That's the point. And that's what we're going to do in a moment. In German medicine and metamedicine, this area is called social, territorial, and contact. So traumas around social, territorial, and contact particularly affect the tissues in the newer part of the brain. I am saying the new bit of information is those things only matter if they help you define your own sense of self and identity. Otherwise, they don't matter. You take my piece of, bread, you break my phone, it's all right. It doesn't define who I am. I may need to do something about it and get a new phone or when it becomes traumatic, it is because if somebody has overstepped boundaries, these are the boundaries to my sense of self. These are the boundaries to my tribe. And these are the physical boundaries of my body. And the middle one is actually my emotional boundaries. I need to know my own boundaries. I need to know my own sense of self and what is good for me to have incoming and what I need to get out. I need to self-define those boundaries. When those boundaries are violated, I need to have ways in which I can hold those boundaries without fear of, if I stand up for myself, you're going to dump me and therefore I'll be abandoned and die. So where it all comes together is in the tribe in the middle. And our system adapts actually all tissues. And there are 3 main tissues, 3 main responses, and 3 ways of dealing with that. The ones that we're dealing with at the moment, so let's think about the situation now. This is viruses at the top. Social, territorial, and contact. And this will begin to bring it to a conclusion, and we'll move in the last quarter of an hour to what we can do. We'll do something together and you can ask some questions, okay? So here is me. I have my own sense of self and then my tribal sense of self and then a consciousness sense of self. And this has come about from really understanding consciousness as well. And consciousness is part of healing. I have my own auto-biome and I have my ability to self-regulate. We have a tribal, herd biome, and a geobiome. Okay. We have been drip fed for a long time, and I've been looking at World War I and II posters too, which has been really interesting, about food and not wasting food, and how you should give that to the soldiers and things like that. Okay, so we have, what is it that we are in a culture of at the moment? Okay, we're in a culture of war and weapons of mass destruction. We are in a culture of terrorism and bombs. The them syndrome. We are in a culture of well, the germs themselves, right? Okay, so we've got weapons. We are being invaded by immigrants. And let's take a really small example of this at the moment. Do you remember I said with these 3 levels, they're not levels because actually they're all integrated, and you don't transcend in an animal. You have to accept that you're the animal in order to integrate. Okay, so integration and coherence is ensuring that these levels and ways that you can die are integrated and are all satiated, because when one's out, they're all out. There's no doing all up here, I'm going to be all good, because you've still got an animal body, so you can't around. That's when you get into actual spiritual competition, which is actually tribal, because I want you to see how spiritual I am. I'm more spiritual than you, and then spiritual snobbery, and actually that's about looking good in the tribe, and that's really tribal brainstem again. What we have if we get pushed into tribal and brainstem fear, we can be sympathetic. In a tribe, we want empathy, and we develop empathetic. And really up here, it's compassion, but I'm trying to find another word that goes with pathetic. Compathetic, I have called it. Vic doesn't like it that I keep making up words, but I just think it's the only way forward. So compathetic as in compassion. Okay. This is me, 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 me. I have to have enough or I'll die. This is about separation. This is about a reptile that can't run away, can't fight and flight. It has to retreat. And we're being forced at the moment to retreat. So people have gone into brainstem, I'm going to die. So it doesn't help us to be mean to the people who are buying all the toilet rolls. They are scared, and that's their go-to response. And if they were children of, you know, the kind of 60s, 70s, or if they've passed on their values, which happen here, about having enough, then that's going to be their trigger. Okay. Sympathy is, and Brené Brown's the best person for this. Sympathy is when we say, oh God, I can see that must be awful for you. Glad it's not me. Now go away, because else you might bring that danger into my door, right? It's the not in my backyard syndrome. Go away. Okay, which is where the issue. Oh. Okay, I'm back. Sorry. Okay, I'm still there. Am I back? Am I back? Have you got me? Yeah. Oh, one attendee's got their hand up. Sorry, I didn't see. Oh, I'm not very good at hands up. Yes. Okay. Does it make sense so far? And please do ask questions. Some people are really, really good in the tribe. You see, so sympathy is, I feel for you, but no, fuck off now, because you're putting me in danger, right? Empathy is where you genuinely feel the other person's feelings. And I'm afraid the news flash, if you're an empath or no empath, is we're all empaths. We're designed to be empaths. We're supposed to feel what the group feels and process what the group processes. If you over feel, then your boundaries are the issue, because you are not defining your sense of self and the sense of someone else's. And you have probably an issue around, you know, the fear of not belonging in the group has made you oversensitive. We either tone it down because it's not safe to know what other people think, or we tune it up because we've got to know what other people feel so that we're safe. So if you've got empathic issues, then your boundaries and sense of self are where your attention needs to be. We're designed to empathize. And by the way, all of the drama triangle, transactional analysis, hero, victim, shame and guilt only work here. Okay, that's what they're for, to invoke empathy. And empathy without redemption and responsibility is actually is really bullying. It's really aggressive. Okay. But that's a whole other thing that is in the book. So the behavior really we want to look at is, how do we recognize what we need as an animal? How do we recognize our role in the tribe? And how do we recognize the bigger picture of holding the safety in the bigger picture for everybody by doing what we can do ourselves? Okay. When the diet that we're given is about invasion, immigrants, invasion, 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 it's an us and them. And the us and them tribe is only an extension of me. So it goes me, 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 me. Then it goes us, 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 us. But actually us is just us and them. It's still me, me, me in my tribe. So the me, 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 get toilet rolls from my family and fuck everybody else because we need to be okay is actually brainstem. It's not really that tribal. A tribe works sympathetically with another tribe and empathically with another tribe, even if their values are different, unless they're in fear. If they're in fear, we go into primary survival. Primary survival is to have enough. So we've been bombarded with things, with things to be afraid of, and now the way that this has been handled is we're being pushed into fearing we have enough and fearing this invasion. Is that a good explanation of where we're at the moment? So if we look at the two phases, I really need a better pen, don't I? Try this one. How does it fit together then? I am being fed things to make me stressed here. So immigration, we could put Brexit in there, but that's had an interesting impact on living. Immigration, terrorists, foreigners. Okay, here's two things I want to point out. Most countries have put some restriction on travel. Have you noticed that the travel restriction says commuters can still go and come back? So if you live here, you can go and come back. Or if you're from this country, but you're in another country, you can come home. The people that can't come in are foreigners. If there's a virus, it doesn't care who it's working on, okay? That should draw, you know, make some alarm bells, because it's just now become an excuse for xenophobia. It's become an excuse to make borders, segregation, and separation, okay? Even the idea of only 5 people at a time can get together. I get the idea is to minimize, but this has become a really good tool of fear. So let's have a look at who's vulnerable. I do have some questions and a kind of questionnaire, but we don't have time for it today. And if you want to kind of do a follow-up tomorrow or another day, then maybe we'll do a follow-up. I haven't got another question. But you can ask yourself how genuinely, not the sensible brain that goes, well, it's all silly. Genuinely, how fearful are you of terrorism, things like foreigners, immigration, you know, people invading or losing loved ones as a result? Because those are the stressors that will make you more vulnerable. So it makes sense that there has been a big spread very quickly when we are, as a population or as a worldview, taught to be afraid of territory invasion, immigrants, people taking what's ours, people, you know, coming into our space and all of that kind of thing. So my recommendation firstly is to be aware of that and be aware of what you've been told to hate and told to fear, because there is no us and them. There's just you, there's just us. And when you make an us and them, you immediately create the illusion of separation. And it's not to deny that you may have fear of having enough. That's okay. The idea is that we integrate the having enough, doing enough, and being enough, so that you recognize what you do need, what you do feel you want to do, the autonomy that you need to feel that you have well, it's an illusion of control, but a sense of ownership, and also how you're viewing other people. So I know it's difficult, because I do agree that people are being stupid about rushing around and buying all the toilet rolls or whatever, okay? But stupid is about, they are stupefied. They don't have autonomy. They don't have solutions. They're afraid. It's not going to help if we just get, because guess what? If you start getting angry that they've got all the toilet paper, that's a territory anger issue, because toilet rolls now matter. And then you're going to actually increase your stress, okay? So we need to be able to come back into coherence, come back into our sense of ownership of self and ownership of our feelings, observe what's going on, and stay. The answer to this is, in the end, is going to be kindness, okay? Not tolerance. Tolerance is different, kindness. And the more coherent we can be in ourselves, the more that will create an effect. And then we can choose what we do want to do and what does need to happen. If we're afraid of being invaded, we need to then decide what we're going to do about it. If you're not going to do anything, then then the focus needs to go on your feelings of it, because otherwise you are just creating the feeling and not giving yourself a solution. Okay. So first thing is to minimize this. Remember, it minimizes this. And alternatively, to minimize this, if you've already started to have symptoms, or you think somebody may have symptoms, then it is to look at what supports somebody through the symptoms, the right diet, the right support, the right care. And this is really important, because if you are going to be properly empathic, that extends beyond the tribal. One of the triggers for this may be some sort of megalomania, and I know what everyone else needs, and I'll fix everything, and I'll organize the tribe, and I you know, and that's a fear response. It could be that, like for me, for example, I don't believe everything that's going on, right? Because I see it a different way. I can see what's being reported, and I can see what I think it means. But if I don't adhere to certain things, then I will just frighten other people, and that's not going to help either. So it might be that I feel I can go around anybody's house, and because I haven't got it, I'm not going to get it. Even if I get it, I don't think, you know, other people are going to get it, but they may have a lot of this going on that I'm not party to. I may even trigger that to make it worse. I don't know what their situation is. So in that case, if I cause more fear, then I'm not helping. So when the question was, what can we do to help our loved ones? The question is to figure out where you stand on this and what they need in order to minimize their risk by minimizing their fear. Okay? And it is to recognize their need to have what they need to have to survive, and now this is where it gets difficult, to be connected, because what we need to do is have enough. We need to belong and be connected. And then we also need to be seen, to be validated and witnessed. And these are the two that I'm talking about now. So if you have family, isolating is not helpful. Talking about a quiet retreat and quiet time has a different energy. And I like that somebody put that, okay? So we're going to just cover now how 5G and other stuff fits, and then ultimately what we can do with all of that information as it feels to us now. Is that okay? Is that and I'm not going to go off at tangents on. I'm going to talk about what is in the public domain and how it could or could not impact what I've been saying. Is that okay? Any questions? I'm only going to run over a quarter of an hour because we were a quarter of an hour late starting. If you really want another session, then we can do a follow-up, and I do have some suggestions for you. Okay, so my chair doesn't move. One of the issues that has come to light is the correlation between, for example, in the UK, it was Brighton. The virus seemed to have started, if you like, or propagated quite a lot from Brighton. And at Wuhan, obviously we know China. There is a correlation, and we're going to look at the difference between correlation and causation. There is a correlation between where 5G has been tested and where the virus started. And I'm not going to go into whether that is correct or not. I have my own beliefs. I have my own understanding of it. But let's just look at it for a moment. So we do know that 5G, they're called millimeter waves. They're a different wavelength to the ones we exist with. Some people may already be struggling with electromagnetic smog and frequencies. And I'll talk about threshold in a minute. The real way to kind of hold the picture in your head is if 100 people were affected the same, it is definitely the thing, you know, the invasive thing. So like if we all ate, you know, a cake of arsenic, we'd all die. That's not how stressed you are, right? That's not how vulnerable or how stressed you are. It clearly is a poison. So the question is then 100% of the time does this fit? So if Wuhan or if Brighton or Italy, also the same, and also, by the way, there is a report, a study of relation between all of the different viruses, so SARS and bird flu and swine flu and all that, they correlate very specifically with the release of other technologies, okay? I will do a piece about that, but this is not about conspiracy theory. I want to explain to you the impact it may or may not have and how that may or may not affect you, okay? So let's say that you are in an area that 5G is released. 5G is a type of frequency that does affect, it's very, very close to the frequency of water and water molecules, and it does affect oxygen. So if you are more vulnerable and susceptible, it's very likely that you will notice something and your body will experience this incoming frequency. We are a collection of frequencies. It'll notice the incoming frequency and it will be trying to adjust and adapt to that. And if it affects water molecules, a BBC program gave a report that said, yeah, no, we don't need to worry about it. And then 3 reports later in the same program went on to say that 3G does affect being able to predict the weather, because the frequency is so close to water that it interferes with their measuring the water in the air to predict the future forecast. So I'm sorry, but at what point did my body stop being largely made of water, right? It didn't. So, so are they trying to kill us off? Well, there is one of the theories is depopulation. This is 5G. But what I'm going to say, it's a good question. What I'm going to say is, here's why I'm not worried about that either, is we adapt. We're designed to adapt. We've already established that if we've got an incoming that we don't like or we're afraid of, then we'll respond. Then we'll repair. Then we will build resilience. That's what we do. That's what we do. Okay? We evolve. And if we can't build resilience at this point, then we evolve and something changes. Now, we might not like that process, so we may get symptoms, but that is what we do. And yes, this is, without being flippant, everybody dies, okay? I am not saying it's okay that we're not looking after our vulnerable. We need to look after the vulnerable, and we need to understand what's going on. But we do also have to understand that we are in a flow. Life is part of a flow. Incoming, life experience, outgoing, and we're still okay. This is where understanding consciousness matters, but we don't have time for that today, which is why conscious health is really about putting all the components together. So what makes health is quality of life. And this is what I believe is the most important thing. It's not how long you're here, it's your quality of life. We are capable of adapting to things if they don't go away. Now, the problem is that those adaptations are seen as genetic mutations, and our cancers are those adaptations, and we haven't evolved in long-term ways yet. We're still adapting in very short-term ways, which are fearful to us. And if you go to YouTube and watch the video, The Disease Paradox, that explains that actually all of our main diseases occur as a threat to survival. And if they're occurring as a threat to survival, the paradox being that if I wasn't afraid of dying, I probably wouldn't get fatal diseases. Okay, but again, we don't have time to go into that now. So let's stay to that. But there's a couple of videos about that. If you've been susceptible to 5G, the symptoms appear to mimic those of the flu. So shortness of breath, but with a dry cough, apparently. Flu-like symptoms, headaches, drowsiness, lack of focus, achiness, and all of that. So you may be susceptible to those. My question to you then is, if you are, why are you more susceptible? Where are your general fears of being invaded? Where can you build on your sense of self-boundaries, your boundaries within your community and connection within your community, belonging and being stable in your community, and also understanding the bigger picture? It may be that that happened, but it was not so bad. Now think about it. When we have an invasion, do you remember we adapt? Our bronchi changes, things change, things adapt for us to cope with it. And then we go into healing. That's when we get a real virus. Your body makes the virus. So it's also possible that somebody who's been exposed to an invasive frequency doesn't especially feel it's invasive, but just felt a bit shit, or a bit out of sorts, but is not got any particular worries about this kind of thing, and then is when it come away from that, they're okay. But if that was quite traumatic and it felt invasive and you had a panic about it and you thought, gee, is going to kill everybody, or, you know, depopulate us, or we're being controlled, or this is that and that. If you have a trauma around it, so there's a response, but there's also a trauma, because it is being done without your permission. It's true. Okay, but how much that matters to you may have caused a trauma, in which case, when you begin to feel a bit better about that trauma, you may get a virus, because that response is your response. Okay, it may be that it's not this thing, the Novo 19 is not a natural virus. If it's a natural virus, it would naturally spread anyway, because as it evolved, we evolved too. So we have a natural capacity, like the flu, to process with it. And I was going to give you lots of comparative statistics. There's no point, because there are, right, let's be really clear on something. When people talk about shock reasons we died, this many people died of a virus, and or this many people died of the flu, and this many people died. When people die of the flu, they don't die of the flu. They die of whatever other symptoms, whatever predisposing conditions, whatever comorbidities, whatever complications become complicated by the flu. Only in very rare occasions is it just the flu, and if it was, that would mean that the trauma was so acute that their bout of the flu was incredibly acute. Okay, so again, we're being told, everyone's clumping everything together. It's not the case. The people and people are going to die of something. We're all going to die of something. Okay, so when we see statistics of how many people died of heart disease, how many people died of cancer, how many people died of the flu, how many, okay, something's going to take us off. You know, we're all going to die of something. The difference is, what is your vulnerability to something happening that complicates other issues, or that complicates issues for other people? How do we minimize that? So if you have a massive issue about 5G and 5G invading you, then you may even trigger your own bout of this after. Now, if the coronavirus 19 and coronavirus is the bird flu and swine flu are all types of coronavirus. It's a name because of the sort of design of it, the shape of it. It's supposed to be, I think, but that's a heading of a group of viruses. If this particular virus has traveled quicker, firstly, do you remember I told you there's an auto-biome, there's a herd biome, and then there's a geo-biome. The geo-biome is really what is more local to us, because we're adaptive with it. And because we travel differently now, we have access to other very much more extended geographic biomes, which we wouldn't normally have done in the past. We wouldn't have been going. So here's an example, very quick. I had a very, very severe and acute shock conflict of anger when myself and my husband were, well, basically we were mugged. We were tricked to go in a shop, tricked to buy something, and I realized, and my mini trauma was, my husband's strategy was very different to mine, and he was just wanted to keep the peace, and so he was just going to buy whatever there was, so we could just get out of there. And he ignored me and he turned away from me, and that was my trigger, because I had somebody trying to drag me away, and my anger and I basically had no way. Well, even though I grabbed the card off him and screamed at him in the shop and we left, that had been the shock that he turned away. Goes back to childhood, goes back to my dad turning away from me. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I know my pattern. Later on, he was very apologetic, didn't resolve it because it has to be the kind of same thing as the trigger. And then at some point, I think just before bed, we were in the hotel in Egypt, and he turned and gave me his full attention and said, you know, I should have paid attention, and I am sorry. He'd said sorry quite a lot before, but it was the full attention, which is what had been the shock. I then went into what the hotel were terrified was very, very severe, and like temperature through the roof, nearly had to go to hospital, food poisoning. But it was an acute territory anger, so it was an acute response. Severe vomiting, severe diarrhea, shakes, temperature, very, very strong acute bout. Had I resolved that at home, the viral microbes that I had and were available to me, I would have been more in simpatico with. I would have maybe not had it as acute symptoms, but they were more aggressive to my own biome and my own immune system. So although they're helping me, they were much more acute because I was in a different geographical location and engaged the viral help, if you like, and supportive herd and geobiome that I wouldn't normally. So the response was very, very strong and very serious. And that is what can happen. So imagine somebody has a territorial boundary issue, and then they travel abroad and they resolve it because everything isn't as bad as they were told and everything's fine. They resolve the issue, they begin to heal, or they begin to feel better, then they come home and they've got a virus. Okay, imagine being fed a diet of being under threat, of being under threat of immigrants invading your space and your jobs, and and terrorists and all of these things that make us afraid of us and them. Okay, and it's not true. It's just not the way we are divided, and this illusion of separation. We all need certain foods and certain things, and this is where I want to kind of end on and finish with now. What is it that we can do? And there's like a little checklist I'm going to just go through with you. So the 5G could have a physical impact. The point is that if you feel helpless and you're staying at home and worrying about it, it isn't doing anybody any good. It isn't helping anyone else. It's certainly not helping you. Becoming more stable in yourself, finding out why you feel that's so bad and so invasive, but also then actioning groups you can join, people you can go to, ways in which you can feel more autonomous, less a victim. That's going to be one of the key things for you to feel better. And it doesn't mean going and breaking curfew or whatever it is. It's how we make community and how we connect with people that is going to be the way forward. Okay? If it is a manufactured virus, i.e. it's genetically modified, which bird flu, swine flu are all, we cannot catch flu from an animal. It's just technically not possible. The bodies go, it's not me. But if you inject me with it, then my body's going to go, that's not me, that's not good, and it will want to get rid of it. Okay? So you can't catch this from an animal. If you've been given a vaccine with something in, or heavy metals and other things that compromise the immune system, it might be that a vaccine suppresses symptoms because it does alter your particular viruses doing particular jobs, but it's a whole other thing to talk about the impact of vaccines. And in third world countries where we give vaccines to people to help them, that's okay to minimize their symptoms, but actually what they also then get at the time is attention, better water, better food. In fact, and if we were just to improve the state of their living conditions, they wouldn't need vaccines because they wouldn't be under threat. But again, another thing. So are we being depopulated? I don't know. But the more in this fear we are, the more likely we are to get symptoms. I agree with the herd immunization. However, why is it not able, but in this circumstances, it can't work in the way I explained, because as the diagram that I got from Gary's, this basically, that's what happened. And then we got another curve somewhere else where it was squished. This isn't good to have more people die. This is how many people died, by the way. You don't want like mass population dying because they're all in that fear that I told you about, right? So the only way it works is if mass herd immunity is more like that. Actually, it's okay. We get through it together. We detox our stuff together. And incidentally, if you understand any of Germany medicine, medicine, the reason some people are left-handed and right-handed is different tissues are affected under the same threat, and therefore we don't have the same response. We don't all die the same thing. That's why electronicity matters in some instances. The different organs are affected. Okay. So what do we want to do? We want to minimize people damaged by it by minimizing the fear. But ultimately, actually, all natural viruses are available to all of us. And it would be madness to suggest that you could stop that. But at the same time, this is potentially not a normal virus, not a real naturally occurring virus. And if it's been modified, then we are not used to adapting to it. And if it's not a modified virus, it may be something called like a protein that creates similar symptoms. If it's that, let's come back to this. So it means that it is going to be affecting us here if it's a protein. If it's a real virus that's been genetically modified, like kind of spliced or whatever, it in theory would still only affect you there. So if you didn't have, I think it's probably a modified virus. I don't think I'm going to get it, or if I get it, it's not true. Actually, I have a territorial issue going on here at the moment with where we live, and so I may get some symptoms if I resolve that, because here you have to have resolved the issue to get the symptoms. Okay, so the reason not everyone's getting it, and the reason some people are getting it worse than others, is because some people have got more of this in their allostatic load than others, and that makes them more vulnerable. It's not about age, although in age we tend to accrue allostatic load by not dealing, that things build up. Okay, and that's what age is. It's the build-up of allostatic load, and now I'm using all my energy to cope with all of these adaptations to things that I'm still adapting to because I didn't complete them and deal with them. Okay, so they just kind of stresses build up. So the more stresses build up on that theme, but then other things change my load. So the other things being the diet and sleep and belonging in contact. So let's now look at what we can do, and I'm going to get you make a bit of space for yourselves because we're going to do some stuff together. So in conclusion to this is, because it's not a normal virus, the herd, it's a very risky gamble to let that happen too quickly. So isolation, or let's call it retreat, is a way to minimize this. But ultimately, if it's a virus, it's not going to differentiate. And if it's a virus, even if it's a manufactured one, we're going to adapt to it. We're going to have to adapt to it because now it's there. You can't eradicate it. So we'll just adapt to it. And you may or may not get symptoms depending on how stressed you are about invasion or loss or maintaining your identity through your boundaries. That's what it's about. Any questions? And then we're going to do some exercises. I'm going to give you some support stuff. Okay, let's look at the way we work in conscious health is physical. So we'll stay with that now, but we've got physical, mental, emotional, social, nutritional, environmental, and I never know whether that one should go there or there. It doesn't matter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And really the kind of this bit, this is really the kind of personal view. I encourage you to think about the territorial invasion, your self-identity, how you identify in the tribe, in the group, and all of the many things that we are being taught to be afraid of. Firstly, stop passing it on. Okay? So one is stop passing it on. And this is really more about your social, what are you doing? Stop perpetuating. And by the way, if you're putting anything against the coronavirus, and I've been guilty of this too, so this is for me now too, even if you say this is like an antidote to it, the fact that you're still talking about it is still perpetuating it. Okay? But what has been lacking and what we're seeing happen is people are starting to realize they need to be more social. People are starting to do nice social things they might not have done before. Yes, the earth may be healing while we're all not polluting it. So there are some interesting things coming out of this. Okay? But the most important thing is that we take responsibility for our own spread of fear and our own ability to regulate ourselves. So the question that people have had really is who's at risk and what can I do? And how does this, how can we protect those that we love? I'm just going to check these ones. Is it a virus? Does the pandemic work? Okay, is it meant to control us? Okay, all of those. Nobody can control you, but we're in a situation where we've given away our power to people who are maybe not doing the best job, but they're doing their best too. There's no good blaming them when we can do something ourselves. I will set, perhaps tomorrow, I think breathing exercises will create coherence. We need to be able to observe what it is that we can do for ourselves and other people. Physically, I'm going to show you a pose to stand in that will help. Some of you may know it already. Socially, what is the outreach that you need to do to make yourself stay connected? Because we need to belong. And this is really important in the workplace. People do not need to feel isolated, exiled, abandoned. So we've got abandoned in the brainstem, exiled in the social, and really unseen and unvalidated. Okay, 3 different ways to die from a similar experience. We want people to feel that they belong, and you need to feel that you belong. But you don't want to frighten other people by swanning around going, oh, well, it's all right then. Okay, because we don't know the full picture and we don't want to scare them, even if we feel we do. So having your own, it's okay, no worries, Lee. Having your own sense of centered acknowledgement of your own fear. And be kind to yourself, because you've got these 3 parts. So we've all got 3 responses. So for example, when I'm falling out with somebody, or let's face it, it's usually Vic, the brainstem is just fuck off, right? Because that's the brainstem wants to retreat, hoard, and push the danger away, or kill it if it can't do enough. Otherwise, the tribal response is to get everyone on side against the thing that's a threat, or shame the person that is a threat, and that's what's going on at the moment. But also we need to help heal that and heal all the people that are afraid. The more we can help with healing the people that are afraid, the better. It's no good judging the people hoarding the paper, or the people that are in control. They're there because of our system, and our system doesn't work. Okay? And it is not the foreigners. There is no us and them. So sending love to everybody that you're afraid is going to invade you. You don't have to have, 20 immigrants move in your house, but something's got to change, right? And we have to start seeing it a different way. And it's that change that is going to be the wave of change that we need. It can go one or two ways. It's either going to go that we just get controlled, vaccines, depopulated, and then we have no say, or we begin to become aware. And we begin locally to connect. Decentralized connection, support, this, without going off into talking about the difference between a hierarchy and a hierarchy, we need people to lead and to make decisions, but those decisions are connected to what people actually need. Okay. And this is really the strong business, the way a business works is they need to, we need people to own, run, manage a business, but actually every part, every single cell in your body has a job. Every single person has a job, is as valuable. And we need to begin now to see that everybody's fear is relevant. And what you can do is control how you feel and let that be the beacon. Somebody said I was a beacon earlier. I think it was Indy. We're all beacons. You just got to decide what you're giving off. Okay, we're all beacons. So deciding what you give off and being angry with the people that don't get it. I do get that sometimes myself. It doesn't help either. It doesn't mean you shouldn't hold a boundary. Correct people if that needs to happen, but we do it with compassion is important. So I'm going to teach you a pose. Nutritional. I am not going to give you nutritional information other than say, obviously, research and find out if you've got a particular symptom, what things you need to support your system to heal that. Liver, for example, things like milk thistle, that kind of thing. Research what helps support your immune, and eating the right foods, taking supplements, or doing whatever is, at this point in our evolution, we need the building blocks. I'm not going to say any more on that. Social belonging. This is responsibility for you triggering others and your triggers. And again, emotional, letting this happen when we do the breathing, meditation, sitting, connecting, and listening to our own thoughts and beliefs and fears. Yours are going to be related to your values, because what you think is being challenged will be based on your ICE, inheritance, conditioning, experiences before 6 years old. I don't want to rush, but we've gone over time, and I want to end with an exercise, and I'm happy if enough people request, I will kind of almost do a part 2 where we'll summarize it and do more on the planning and exercise. And I do have more information for you about our tribal dynamic exchange, which is basically, it's kind of based, well, it's kind of similar to the power of 8, Limit Tank's power of 8, where we look at how we can get this. My new model is called triune quintessence, where we can use triune quintessence to help people quite quickly create safety, belonging, and help them in their identity, quite quickly, and people learn those skills in small social groups, so that you're starting to support each other. Let's do an exercise, and I'll explain it as we do it. You can do it sitting down. Definitely better standing up. It's not new. Nothing I've said is new. But the one thing that you can do is cope with your own drama, disconnect from the drama, not perpetuate the drama, take responsibility for your own feelings and emotions, your own health and bioimmunity. Notice your own symptoms, not scare other people, so be respectful. And we have a whole business model that Vic is writing, the respect model of how we get groups to work together in the workplace, not just on health, but on really what matters in order to make a coherent workplace. And this is the kind of social aspect of that. And when you have your family, when you have people that you care about, that you're worried about, when you are coherent, you will be able to figure out and connect with what needs to happen for that person. And it may be that you need to keep in touch. I had an email from the Labour Party asking for volunteers to go around and help do shopping and help vulnerable people. So I will do that because it's an official way. I had thought about how could I do that myself. I'm yet to see how they're going to kind of screen it and make it possible. But if you want to help other people or members of your family, discussing with them so that they feel seen, they belong, and they feel safe is the key 3 core ways to help somebody strengthen their immune. So let's strengthen our immune with, and I have a heart smile. We developed the heart smiles in Bosnia, and then we used that in Indonesia and Thailand. And if you want a heart smile, I thought I might make some stickers, or certainly make it so you can buy stickers so that you can share the heart smile. So do you want to do a heart smile? It's a combination exercise now. Okay, so if you can stand up, please do. I'm going to move this. So David Hamilton made this more common, more famous, but it actually is a well-researched exercise that our body doesn't know the difference. You know, our physical, the biofeedback of our body works both ways. So in order to create strength and strengthen the immune system, smiling, laughing, sending out love, and being in a strong pose, and in particular, there's a whole other bit we could do on breathing. Getting into coherence is the fundamental way to create a stable working immune system. Okay, because stuff comes in and it's got to go out, and being okay with that is really the only way to be in flow. So stand up, plant your feet on the ground, shoulder width apart. I can tip that down a little bit if you want. Let your knees unlock, and this is the basic Wu Chi pose where you feel connected, but we're going to do the power pose. And there's a couple of things I want you to understand. You can do it like this, which feet a little bit further apart. You have to stand back a little, lean back, because you're exposing yourself and tilting your head back a little bit. Okay. This pose also works. Being open to receive. Tilting your head back is also, they're very vulnerable poses, and what you're telling your body is, I am safe. Okay, to do that, I have to be safe. Else that's protection. So standing like this for 3 minutes, we're not going to do that now. Or standing like this, you can do it like that or like that. And I've been doing this outside, looking up at the sky, not at the sun, but at the sky. And then I do my breathing like this at the moment. Okay, so you can stand in the strength pose, or you can stand in the kind of open to receive. This is actually opens the heart and the lungs as well. And we're going to just do a simple coherent breathing. And the first thing is just to regulate the breath. So if you can't hold your hands up that long because you're not used to it, put your hands on your hips. You can also put your hands on your heart, one on your heart and one on the dantian. Again, just creating an energy loop. But try this one. Okay, so big breath in, breath out. Big breath in, out. And all you're doing is allowing your gaze needs to be above your eye level. Okay, and just allowing the breath to come in and out. Now my breath is very long and slow, but I want you to just slow yours down a bit more than usual. In and out, and in and out. And as you do that, continuing to breathe in, imagine the breath now coming in through the crown to the heart and out from the heart. You breathe out, in through the crown and out from the heart. In through the crown, out from the heart, and in from the earth and out from the heart. In from the earth, out from the heart, and both in and out from the heart. Okay, breathing in from the crown and the root and out from the heart. And just doing that in your own pace, breathing in, allowing it to slow a little bit, and out at the heart. Just keep imagining that breath coming in through the crown and even up through the feet if you wish, but certainly through the root and or the base of your spine, and then out from the heart. Breathing in and breathing out. And as you keep doing that, what we're inviting is we're using the pose and the breathing to regulate the vagal nerve to tell the body it's okay, right? In this moment, it's okay. Breathing in and breathing out. And in doing that, we allow the brain to work properly, and we can reconnect the enteric brain, the gut instinct, our instinct for survival. We can connect the heart, our intuition for what is right for us. What do you do if you're becoming dizzy? Sit down, slow the breathing down. It's because you're getting more oxygen to the brain and you're not used to it. So if you are a bit dizzy, slow the breathing down. And if you do a little bit more gently, then you should acclimatize, I suppose would be the, okay. Okay, we'll just slow the breathing down. Or if you feel unsafe, stop doing the exercise. If you're okay to go with it. We are in a state of fight flight. We have restricted our breathing and we're restricting the oxygen getting to our body. A huge part of chronic fatigue is not enough oxygen to take around the body to every cell. Our body is starved of energy. And our brain becomes starved of energy. So you may become more dizzy if you're getting more oxygen. But you must breathe out properly and breathe out the carbon dioxide. And the re-regulation of oxygen and carbon dioxide will send different signals. And I'm gonna, so Miri, in a second I'm going to adjust this, okay? We're going to reconnect instinct, intuition, and our higher intellect. So we're sensing a feeling running through and connecting to that which is more than us alone, our connection. Now, Miri's asked about dizziness. What I'm going to talk you through now is how to adjust the breathing slightly into a fractal breathing that releases more carbon dioxide. So we're going to breathe in, 2, 3, 4, not too long, okay? And then out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I want you to, same amount of breath, but just control it as it goes out. So breathe in. And now as you breathe out, go longer, control it. In. Don't breathe in so deeply, Mary. So if you're getting dizzy, don't breathe in so deeply. And then out. And as you breathe in, 4 or 5 for now. 6 would be optimum. And out. In and out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, and in, and the receptors around your heart will start to respond. Just gently with yourself, okay? Miri, let me know if you have settled down. In, and just go at your own pace. If you've been breathing very shallowly, it will be a strain to try and breathe at what I would say that, you know, the best cyclic breath, about 6. Okay, good. Coherence is really happens at about 6 cycles of breath in a minute. Okay, so 6 seconds, but just getting in tune with yourself again. So breathing in for 4 or 5, and then pushing it out for slightly longer, changes the fractal dynamic, changes the balance, and it actually releases carbon dioxide. That sends a different message to the heart, sends a different message to the brain. We don't have time to talk about coherence and what all that means now, but this is a good first step. Sharing calm with other people is the best thing you can do. We don't know which of these millions of stories is true. What we do know is, what I know is, that we have the capacity to heal and we have the capacity to deal with incoming. But the thing that weakens us is the fear and activating too many programs. So we're aiming to decrease the impact by minimizing and bringing down the load. Okay, so the more you can do that, and with your kids and your friends and your family, smiling, shaking and laughing. And I have done laughter yoga, but I'm not going to get into that now. Anything that makes you laugh, smile, share a smile, pass a smile on. I think maybe we need to do some sort of campaign about passing a smile on. Finding ways in which you can connect in a safe way and support other people. That's the kind of main message. So if you're expecting some kind of big major thing, there is no big major thing you can do other than do it from a different place. That's the big major thing. Do it from a different place. Do it from a place of self-awareness, of self-trust, of self-healing, of understanding that, you know, we made some choices because it was, let's face it, we can sell drugs for these choices, right? These choices, and they're not actually the truth. They're a truth that we adopted that actually we don't have to, because that's not the way things really work. And if you want more information on any of that, then obviously I can share with you. If you have any problems from this, please message me after the call. If you want another call, we can arrange something, possibly same time tomorrow, I think. I will be meeting with Lucy tomorrow about how we set up the tribal dynamic exchanges, and so after that you may want to know more about that. So hopefully you feel calm. Any questions? So final message really is, there is no us and them. We are all a beacon. We are all an example. Think about the effect and impact you want to have on your kids, on your family, on your loved ones, on the older people. Everybody needs those three main, three ways to die are the 3 ways to survive, right? To be safe, physically, have foods and a space to go, and shelter. I mean, we have to look at the people in the world that don't have that. Belong, feel we're part of something, that we're valued, that we matter, and to be seen, to be witnessed as the unique individuals that we are. How do you do that for yourself, that you will then be in a stronger position to do that for others and not be in fear. Okay, so hopefully this has been helpful, and please do, you know, ask questions. I'm going to put this on YouTube so it'll be readily available, and if there's enough interest, then I'll do a follow-up. Okay, and we'll do more on exercises. We can do some questions on finding maybe where your weak areas are, maybe where you might not be noticing that you have particular fears that are kind of creeping in. Okay, but there's no point hating the people or being angry with the toilet roll grabbers or even you know, Boris Johnson. I'll end on a story, famous fable. So that their brain is arguing with the heart about who is most important. And the brain says, well, I tell everything what to do, and the heart says, yeah, but I regulate the blood, and I see that the blood circulates around the body, and they're arguing about who is the most important organ in the body. And the anus went on strike, and everybody died. So what is the point of that? The point is that everybody's got a job, and just because that job is specific, it doesn't make anybody better than anybody else. Nobody is better than anybody else. And, you know, as Bruce Lipton says, kind of no man left behind. You can't make white light without all of the colors. And one of the things that has to change in order for things like this to not, you know, this virus to not have such an impact is our healing the fear of attack, invasion of others, the us and them, and identifying the namaste. So we'll end with the namaste. So the namaste means the light in me acknowledges the light in you. In Buddhism, we call it it's the Monjin, and then the bow is the Geshe. And the light is in everybody. So shining, so I love the term beacon. Shining your light is what will make you the most healthy and help other people. Okay, so thanks, and I'll let you know when this is available.